All right, chapter 21. This is a unique chapter in that there's not really any categories within it, but it's just one big category on the sovereignty of God. And we know that, and we'll rather think that, because it's hard to know for sure what was in the mind of Solomon as he wrote these, in the mind of those who also put them together. Because remember, Solomon didn't necessarily write them from chapter 1, verse 1, all the way through. He wrote them at, he wrote 3,000 Proverbs. And then at some point, people put them together into the book that we have now. And then much, much later, which this is not inspired, they put the chapter and verses, trying to discover where the natural breaks were. Well, this seems to be from verse 1 to verse 31 all about the sovereignty of God. It's bookended by two verses that are explicitly about God's sovereignty. And so we can be guided as we read it to think of the context as being this is all about God's sovereignty. How could this be true? Because of God's sovereignty. Why does this matter? Because God is sovereign. So I think this is a special chapter to put into your memory as a source of great comfort, because there's nothing that can give us more comfort than knowing that God governs everything on this planet. He governs every leader and ruler, king, president, senator, cop, teacher, parent, anyone in a place of authority. He governs. And that's the argument. That's the way the Hebrew argument works. It goes from the greater to the lesser. And so if the greater is true, then the lesser is true. That's what they're saying. That's how they argue. And this is in a general sense. Obviously, there are exceptions to certain things when you argue greater to lesser, but not when it comes to God's sovereignty. There are no exceptions. He's always sovereign. He's always governing, ruling. You could even say manipulating, although not in a negative, evil sense. He's, you know, I don't know, the image that comes to mind is a clay figure, and you manipulate its limbs to do what you want it to do. And that's what God does. Now, we're not puppets. God does that through our own faculties of reason, decision making, and will. You say, how is that true? I don't know. I don't know exactly how that works, but that is how he rules the world, is he gives us the freedom of choice and we choose, but he also influences our choices. So what a comfort that we know that God is sovereign over everything. And that should motivate us to live with righteousness rather than wickedness. So let's just look at some of these verses. Verse 1, the king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. The king's heart represents all the decisions he makes, and he turns it. God turns the king's heart wherever he wants to. And so every decision a king makes is from the Lord. Every decision a president makes, a Congress makes, any leader makes, it's from the Lord. That means you can trust it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do something about it. You should. You should react to it based on the reaction that a biblical person should have. But you know this is either a test from God or a blessing from God. You know, test is a blessing too, but you get what I mean. It's either negative or positive. Verse 2, every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the heart. And so it doesn't matter what you do, it matters what you think. You could do differently than you think to try to fake people out, but the Lord knows your motives, and your motives are what is most important. So then when we go to the Lord and ask that he helps us grow and become more like Jesus, we should do it at a heart level, not just a behavior level. Oh Lord, help me stop doing this. That's good. But what would be better is, oh Lord, help me stop wanting this. Please help me stop wanting this sin. Verse 3, to do righteousness and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. This relates to verse 2. Listen, you can't manipulate God through rituals. That's what this is saying. You can't just go check a box and be right with God. It has to matter to you from your heart. You have to really love God and want to be right with him. Verse 4, the person that tries to manipulate is like verse 4, haughty eyes, proud heart, lamp or fruit or the plowing, which represents what comes out of the life of the wicked. It's all sin. And so this is a heart game. This is a desire game, not a behavior game. Behavior is the fruit of what's happening underneath. It's like if a farmer only cared about the leaves of his trees and tried to go spray paint all the leaves green. No, the farmer knows, like, it's all about the soil, man. Like, how is the soil? Are the nutrients right? Do we need to let the soil rest this year because we've been farming too hard? Because it matters what's in the soil. And same with us. Our heart is the soil. We need to be right with God in our hearts, and that from that will flow righteousness. Verse 5, the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. Here's a fruit of a good heart. It's a diligent person. And what's great about the diligent person is it leads to abundance. What does it mean to be diligent? Well, diligence is working hard with intentional force. You are a carefully resolved planner. Compare that to someone who is hasty, who works a lot, but he's all over the place, always changing his direction, always changing his desired outcome, always changing his pace of work. He goes strictly off of his emotions. If he wakes up and feels lazy, he's lazy. If he wakes up and feels motivated, he works hard, but he's always working on something different. He's like a bee that's just buzzing around but has no goal, which I know that's not what bees are. They have a goal, but the perception of a bee. Versus an ant who is like on this path and he's just slowly walking, and he gets his little crumb and he puts it on his shoulder and he slowly walks back and he goes and does it again over and over and over. And so we need to be like ants. We have diligence, and that will bring us to abundance. Diligence in your spiritual life, have a Bible reading plan rather than just opening it up to a random page and hoping it blesses you and then jumping over to this. Have a system of working through God's word. Have a system in prayer, a diligent, careful, resolved system that you stick to. And when you get off track, that's life. That happens. Nobody's perfect. Even the ant, sometimes has to get off track, but you get back on track and you get back on your plan. You don't just throw all your planning to the winds. And so if you're diligent, you're going to come into abundance financially, spiritually, etc. Now, the getting of treasures by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor and a snare of death. So when you're hasty, you think you can overcome your lack of results by lying. Well, it's a fleeting vapor and a snare of death. You're going to die. You're going to not have that abundance you're seeking. Verse 7, the violence of the wicked will sweep them away. Here's another thing the hasty who comes into poverty tries to overcome their poverty with violence. Doesn't work. Verse 8, overall, the way. This is the general behavior of the hasty. It's crooked and it brings upon guilt. The pure is upright, morally upright, virtuous. People look at it and say, that's the way I want to live. That would be nice if I could live that way. Well, change your desires or ask the Lord to change them, and you will. And it starts with the fear of the Lord and salvation. Verse 9, it's better to live in a corner of the housetop than in a house shared with a quarrelsome wife. Men, choose your wives carefully. Don't pick an unkind woman, quarrelsome. Don't pick a combative woman. Now, if they're righteous and they're not afraid of confrontation, well, that's good. But if they're just quarrelsome, wanting to beat you down with their words, if you see that in their life, maybe not towards you in the dating phase, but perhaps you see that in their life towards others that they're a little more comfortable with, well, that will be you after about 1 year of marriage. You're going to get beat up by this chick, and you're going to be living in a corner of the housetop. That's where the man cave comes from. We create a man cave because we need to get away from our quarrelsome wives. Now, a lot of times they're upset at you because you're lazy and you're a bum and you don't protect and provide and care for, etc. That's no excuse for you or for her. Um, but um, obviously, there's other proverbs that deal with the man. This one is about the woman. Verse 10, the soul of the wicked desires evil. His neighbor finds no mercy in his eyes. So this wickedness is deep. It comes from the soul. It comes from the desire. That's why we have to change our desires. Verse 11, when a scoffer is punished, the simple becomes wise. The simple, remember, is the uncommitted fool. The scoffer is the committed fool, and he's not changing. He's made his way. He's made his bed. He's going to lie in it. The simple is like up and coming, and he's being influenced by both, and he kind of flip-flops. Well, the simple will learn from when the scoffer gets consequences. And so don't, when someone's a fool and they're a scoffer and you're like, they're not even worth my time. No, they are worth your time, because the simple will see how you deal with that person and the consequences they get. And I'm thinking in the context of a family and a disciplinarian at a school, things like that. Still do it, follow through on the consequence, even though they're not going to change, because the simple will see that. The simple will also see if you're not consistent in discipline, and they will walk all over you if they know they can get away with it. So that's just a wise uh, concept. Verse 12, the righteous one observes the house of the wicked. He throws the wicked down to ruin. The righteous one is God. He sees everything because he's sovereign. Whoever closes his ear to the poor will himself call out and not be answered. When you close your ear to the poor, it shows that you're ungrateful for everything God has given you. It shows that you don't think you could ever become poor, because you have no compassion on them. It shows that you think you've done everything for yourself, rather than received it from God. And so God knows that. He knows the heart. And so how do you view the poor? How do you think about the poor? Um, we can't fix the poor, because they are poor because of their desires and their mind and their skills and their upbringing. And you can't fix that, but you can still care about them. You can still think about them in the right way. And so it's it's basically heart surgery. Uh, What I mean by that is how you deal with the poor is an X-ray into what your heart looks like. It's like the Grinch when he puts that little X-ray machine up and sees his heart growing when he cares about the who's. Verse 14, a gift in secret averts anger, and a concealed bribe strong wrath. This is something you should not do. This is not how you deal with people who are angry with you, or people who are mad at you. You don't bribe them in secret. That is wrong. Justice, however, in verse 15, is a joy to the righteous, but a terror to evildoers. Listen, the person is mad because you're evil. If you want him to not be mad, then be righteous, do righteous things. Verse 16, one who wanders from the way of good sense will rest in the assembly of the dead. It represents a path. You have a choice every morning, you're in the narrow way or the wide way. When you wander, you're going to end up dead in hell. Here's one reason, verse 17, that people wander: because they love pleasure. They desire it. Pleasure is something the Lord has given us to enjoy at certain times in certain ways. And what happens is the person that wanders, they try to hack their life to make it a constant source of pleasure. They're hedonistic. They want to always feel good or be comfortable. But that's not life. Life is about being uncomfortable, about working hard, and every once in a while you enjoy some pleasure. But that pleasure should be in a very small amount compared to toil and work. And that's the way God designed it. And we live in a culture that emphasizes pleasure far and above work. I mean, what do people tell you when you're a kid? Well, just do what you love. No, don't do what you can't. What that represents, what they mean by that is you should love your work. You should love what you do. No, work is work. It doesn't matter how much you love something. Once it starts becoming your source of income, it's gonna feel like um, like work, and that's good because the feeling of work is actually better than pleasure. And what I mean by that is when you consistently work hard, knowing you're being faithful, your body's tired, your mind's tired, you sleep good. That's a great cycle. Live in that cycle. All right, I'm on a soapbox, so just it the word cuts it straight. The word cuts us enough. Don't love pleasure. Don't love wine and oil. Don't desire it. Don't prioritize those things in your life. Those are very costly indulgences, wine and oil. And verse 20, I'll just hit that now. Precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it. So here's the picture. Wine and oil represent very costly things. Now, a wise man will have them in his house because maybe someone gave them to him, maybe he purchased them out of excess, but they're there. He doesn't devour them. So think about a very expensive bottle of wine. It's there in his house, but it's not like he's drinking it every night because he knows that those are for very special occasions. The amount of pleasure should be very small compared to the feeling of faithfulness and hard work, etc. So hopefully that's clear. The wicked is a ransom for the righteous and the traitor for the upright. I have no notes next to that one. I don't even know what it means. The wicked is a ransom for the righteous. So the wicked is given up for the righteous. I have an idea of what that means, but I don't want to be wrong, so I'm not going to say it. Verse 19, it is better to live in a desert land than with a quarrelsome and fretful woman. All right, poor buddy. First he was in the corner of the house, now he got kicked out to the desert, or maybe he ran away. And what this is saying, it's better to be alone than with a combative, unkind wife or a fretful woman who is anxious. So again, choose your wives carefully. Verse 21, if you pursue righteousness and kindness, you will find life, righteousness, and honor. Stop worrying about the wrong things like wealth, like earthly treasures. Pursue righteousness, kindness. The Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Verse 22, a wise man scales the city of the mighty. This is an example of someone who pursues righteousness. He brings down the stronghold in which they trust. This is a righteous man who fights evil. This could be the evangelist who tries to overcome obstacles in a man's way of Jesus Christ. This could be someone who fights the culture wars or fights political battles with the Word of God. And that's someone who pursues righteousness. Verse 23, whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. Hey, we haven't talked about speech in a while, but there we go. Um, the tongue is a powerful tool. Um, you need to mind it and make sure you're using it for righteousness. So 23 fits in with 21. That's a righteous man will pursue good speech. Verse 24, scoffer is the name of the arrogant, haughty man who acts with arrogant pride. Um, cool. He defines scoffer for us. We know this. Scoffer is someone who is committed to foolishness. Verse 25, the desire of the sluggard kills him, for his hands refuse to labor. There we go again. Desires are where it gets out of whack. I think it talks about desire so much in this chapter because we know that God is sovereign over our desires. So in all these things, we know these things can change. So the lazy person desires pleasure. And because of that, he doesn't want to labor because labor doesn't feel good at the time. It's just counterintuitive. Um, Work hard, get a little pleasure at the end, and that pleasure will keep you coming back for the hard work. That's the cycle that is designed. People try to reverse that and say, I want to work a little bit for a lot of pleasure. But what happens is you're never fully satisfied, and you need more and more pleasure to be satisfied because you've messed up the dopamine cycle in your brain, and you actually become miserable. And so it's counterintuitive. God has created the system to work. When you work, you get a little happier each time. And you know that you're living a faithful, righteous life. The sluggard all day long craves and craves, but the righteous gives and does not hold back. It's, again, counterintuitive. The righteous person is generous and selfless, and they feel better at the end of the day than the person that wants and wants. That's how God's designed it. The sacrifice or the ritual or the religious ritual of the wicked is an abomination. How much more when he brings it with an evil intent to manipulate God? How foolish, thinking you can manipulate an omnipotent and omniscient God. Verse 28, a false witness will perish, but the word of a man who hears will endure. It all starts with the listener. You got two ears, one mouth. Do you listen well? Because the one who listens well can give a good witness or testimony. A wicked man puts on a bold face, but it's fake. It doesn't confuse the righteous man because the upright will still give thought to his ways. Bold face is basically, I'm going to double down on my lie, but the righteous man can see right through it. And then 30 and 31 bookends the chapter with God's sovereignty. No wisdom, no understanding, no counsel can avail against the Lord. The horse is made ready for the day of battle, but the victory belongs to the Lord. He gets all the credit, all the glory for your desires. This should bring us to prayer. We should be begging God to change every one of our sinful desires and praising Him for all of our righteous desires. And this also shows us how to petition for others, how to pray for others. This also helps us trust in the current affairs of the world and how things are going. Don't let it bring you anxiety. God is the one that's bringing it about. Just be along for the ride and ask Him what part you can play in His world um, as you live here and enjoy all of His many blessings.